back. WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It is a Pittsburgh week around here, and don't hold that against this guy. Even though out on the front of his Twitter, at Aaron_Torres, that's 2 R's and an S, not a Z. He has a picture of him and Antonio Brown there. I know Jimmy Smith will not be guarding Antonio Brown. I'm hoping that whatever mojo you had on Marlon Humphrey wears off on him, Aaron Torres. But I'm not here to talk about the past or the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens rivalry. We'll figure that out at the Confluence on Sunday night. I'm here to talk college football with you because that's what you do at Fox Sports Radio and what you did at Fox Sports for a long, long time. I have called this the chaos of college football and this Final Four. This is exactly why this system stinks, dude.
Why do you think so? I'm curious.
Well, I just think Alabama getting sort of, grandfathered in. I'm not necessarily against it or not the notion that they're not one of the top 4 teams. The fact that the Big Ten got left, USA. I don't like the way it's structured, and it's a nice little tournament. We'll watch the games and all that. But for any of the dogs with their noses pressed up to the glass, I think they have legitimate squawk on that for me.
Yeah, it's tough because I find it funny that, this is the year that everyone's demanding, this proves we need an 18 playoff. Well, first of all, we get an 18 playoff. People are going to be complaining about number 9. And if there was an 18 playoff this year, a team like either Auburn or Wisconsin would have got in that flat out doesn't deserve the right to, I don't want to say they don't deserve a right to play for a national championship, but they clearly proved inferior. And so, to me, I think it's funny that we're demanding this 8-team college football playoff and we can't even figure out 4 worthy teams for participation, and I like the number at 4. I like the idea that you really, listen, you don't have to be perfect. There's nobody in this field that is perfect. But that you do need to, be, perfect is the wrong word, but excellent is a fair word. And so to me, I look at it as, look, Ohio State had one really bad night at Iowa, and they didn't just lose in that game. They quit. They gave up. They stopped trying. And so to me, I have no problem saying that in this particular year, a conference championship isn't enough, in the same way that last year a conference championship wasn't enough for Penn State. To me, I still think the removal of Penn State last year was much more egregious than keeping Ohio State out this year. To me, every kind of statistical measurement favors Alabama in terms of on-the-field production, even if they didn't have the kind of quality wins that they did in the past. So to me, I think, first of all, I think they got the 4 teams right. I think these are the 4 best teams in the sport. But I would add that, for people that are just up in arms, it's like, I don't get it. I mean, maybe
I don't know why you have conferences, though. That would be my argument, Aaron. You're going to have these conferences, you're going to have these conference championships, and if they don't prove anything to at least allow you to pass through, that you're going to say another conference was that much stronger to send 2 instead of 1. I'm just against that, and I think, look, all of this is set along the backdrop for me of the college football royalty thing. I'm a Maryland fan. Fair enough. They're not good enough. They didn't have 4 quarterbacks. They didn't have 1 quarterback. So I'm not bitching from any specific fan base where I'm an Auburn fan pissed at Alabama. I am the David that doesn't like the Goliath in general, and that's probably the way I've been on the radio for 26 years. I'm an underdog rooter, and I don't know that Georgia's really an underdog at this point. Maybe they feel that way to me at this point, but I do feel like, Alabama losing the game, losing the Iron Bowl, didn't wind up meaning anything. And it bought them the opportunity to not lose this past weekend. So, I think when you lose a game late like that and you don't even play in your conference championship, that means you weren't in the playoffs. That means you're in the NIT because you weren't even in your own conference championship. So if that's the case, why have conference championship games other than to cost another team another loss and another opportunity to get in? So I think when you play that extra game to begin with, Alabama was, who the hell were they playing 2 weeks ago? Was it, broken pelvis or I don't know who, but they had a bye week 2 weeks ago, So
well, let me ask you this. Were you this outraged last year when Penn State got left out over Ohio State?
No, because I hate Penn State and they rape little boys. But but look, when it comes to Penn State, if you're making that argument last year, then you have to make it this year. I guess part of it is that it's incongruent for what happened to Penn State last year and what happened to Alabama this year. I think that there should be some argument about it.
Yeah, well, see, and what I like is that last year I was very adamant that Penn State should be in, and it was more because they had the head-to-head win against Ohio State, but I was also adamant this year that Alabama should be in because I think they're one of the 4 best teams. And the one thing that I do like about this, it's funny because I see a lot of people who cover professional sports for a living. Not you, Nestor. Now, I know your focus is mainly the Ravens and the Orioles and all that, and the Caps, of course. How could I forget your beloved Caps? But I see the argument of all these conference championships, this and that, the other thing. Yet these same people, and I'm not saying you, I'm just saying in general, are the same people that are outraged when a 7-9 division winner gets into the NFL playoffs, or when a sub 500 Eastern Conference team gets into the NBA playoffs, and a 500 team or better gets into the gets left out in the West. And so to me, I don't think there's any perfect solution in any of these sports. By the way, I think you could argue baseball has the best playoff with the 1-game play-in, but my point is all of these leagues, all of these sports have flaws. And so to me, I think at the end of the day, the College Football Playoff Committee is tasked with putting the 4 best teams in the country in this thing. Now, I do agree with you, by the way, that there are some scheduling incongruities that need to be figured out. Just as an example, I have no problem with Alabama playing Mercer the second to last week of the season if that's what their schedule allows, but it didn't help them against Auburn. And so to me, what I wonder is why aren't more people talking about the fact that the Big Ten plays 9 conference games where the ACC and the SEC only play 8? So we were talking about a situation where you have 2 SEC teams in, we had 2 ACC teams down the stretch, and had Miami not lost to Pittsburgh on the last day of the regular season, people would have been arguing on their behalf to get into the college football playoff. So why do the Big 10, Big 12, and the Big 12, Big 10, and Pac-12 have to play 9 conference games, but the SEC and ACC only play 8? By the way,
because college football screwed up, and it's been this way from the beginning of time, and really it's just about making money at this point. I don't think they're really all that concerned about who's number 5th or 6th left at the altar, or to your point, 9th or 10th. If they could put 8 teams in here and stretch this thing out and play the damn thing in March, play it on St. Patrick's Day, if they could make more money, I think they would figure out a way to do it.
I disagree with you on that. You saying that people don't care. You think Jim Delaney isn't stamping his feet around the Big Ten offices today, furious that his conference champion, that he had 3 teams finish in the top 10 and none of them are in the top 4. I think there's a lot of people that are pissed off. That's also, by the way, why I give so much credit to the committee, because they didn't buckle to political pressure. The easy thing would have been to put Ohio State in that 4th spot. The easy thing would have kind of been to make the argument that you're making, that they won a conference championship, they played the extra game. But, they said, look, on the field results matter, and you lost by 31 points to a 7-5 team. By the way, TCU fell way down the rankings. TCU was never really in the mix, even if they had won that Big 12 championship game, because they lost to a 7-5 Iowa State team. So to me, I don't believe the notion that it's all about money and who cares because everybody's making money. Jim Delaney's pissed off because his conference just lost out on a ton of money. Larry Scott's pissed off because his conference just lost out on a ton of money.
But he signed up for it. I mean, they've all signed up for this system that,
I agree.
It's never going to be any good. I mean, I've been talking about it for 26 years on the radio, going back to pre-BCS and, when, all the bowl games were married to their conferences and, never shall there be anything other than the Fiesta Bowl was born. I've seen all of this in an effort to try to get it right, in an effort to make that there aren't 2 undefeated teams and a disputed national championship team. And I go back to the BYU team team and all that, but there's always some sort of relative BYU team that's left out of the mix that isn't allowed to win. I mean, where would you have been on Wisconsin in all of this had they made their way through this thing unscathed? I mean, I guess there would have had to have been a ticket there, but would there have been? Because beating Ohio State wouldn't have been all that impressive, right?
Well, no. I mean, if Wisconsin finishes the regular season undefeated, they have a nice win over Ohio State. They have the win over Michigan. Yeah, no, Wisconsin's in. I mean, look, I think more than Ohio State having a gripe not being in the playoff, I think Central Florida has the biggest gripe. They went, if that's my bigger thing.
That's your BYU.
Yeah, exactly. And first of all, you guys saw Central Florida up close and in person. You know how good they are. But, like, to me, if that team can go undefeated, they were college football's most explosive offense. I think outside of the 2 times they played Memphis, a really good team. They beat UCLA this year. Outside of those 2 Memphis games, I don't think any win was fewer than single digits. I mean, that's my bigger thing is if I'm a group of 5 AD right now, I'm sitting here and saying, what are we even playing for? Like if that Central Florida team that ran through everybody can't get an invite to the Final Four. I think they finished at like number 11 in the final rankings. They can't even get into the top 10.
Why are they even playing Division I college football?
That to me is a much bigger gripe. And that to me, by the way, I think in my personal opinion, I think that's a stronger argument to go to 8th and say, oh, how did Ohio State get? Well, Ohio State lost by 30 points at Iowa. I don't feel bad that they don't have a shot for a championship. And
Alabama got their ass kicked by Auburn in the after having a bye. I mean, so and they're in. I mean, they're just in, right? They're Alabama. They weren't going to leave them out. I mean, that's how I feel about it.
Well, I don't think it's because they were Alabama. I think it's because overall they were, they lost to a top 10 team on the road and they had a chance to win late. And I'm not saying this. This is my broader point, by the way, Nestor. I think we're kind of coming to an agreement on this. Is why are we going to expand to 8 when we can't even get 4 in there that everyone agrees truly deserve it? And so to me, I think the committee got it right. I think they had to put the 4 best teams in. Alabama beat up everybody they were supposed to. They had a couple nice wins. They had no great wins. By the way, the other thing that kind of bothers me on this whole thing, Nestor, is Alabama not getting credit for playing Florida State early in the year. I mean, we hyped that up, and Nick Saban even said it. He's like, that was the game of you guys in the media called this the game of the century, the best opener of all time. And he's like, why are we being punished because Florida State wasn't as good as we thought? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think that there are always ways to improve the system. I think that scheduling thing is one. As I said, I think we got to get everybody playing the same amount of conference games, all that kind of stuff. To your point, maybe the SEC. By the way, that really annoys me, that whole SEC argument, because Alabama's playing, Florida State in week 1 instead of Mercer. If they played Mercer in week 1, we complain nobody plays anybody in week 1. So they play Florida State in week 1. They play Mercer late. But I'm saying this to say there are still ways to improve the system. I would like the scheduling thing to get kind of more crystal clear. Are we going to credit Alabama for scheduling a top 5 team in the preseason or not? Are we going to punish Alabama for only playing 8 conference games or not? I think there are ways to improve the system, but I'll be honest, I think the 4 best teams are playing for the national championship, and I do feel like Ohio State, 1, they had their chances, but 2, after you watch that Wisconsin game on Saturday night, do you really believe that they have a shot to beat, that they would have had a shot to beat any of the 4 teams in the playoff? Because I don't. I mean, this is a team that needed a miracle comeback against Penn State, didn't play well against Michigan. If Michigan had even competent quarterback play, let alone good quarterback play, Michigan would have won. So I guess to me, maybe that's where I stand. It's not the 1-loss, 2-loss thing. It's that I don't think Ohio State is one of the 4 best teams in the country, and I don't think realistically they would have much of a chance against any of the 3 other teams in the playoff had they had made it over Alabama.
Dude, write this down for posterity because I will never defend Ohio State for anything, right? I mean,
you love Ohio State. You're such an apologist.
Oh, how I hate Ohio State. So, again, it really is more of a David Goliath thing with me. I hate Ohio State equally with Alabama and Notre Dame and all the. But it's kind of like not liking the Yankees and the Red Sox. You don't like them just because, it's like if your team wasn't in it, you didn't like the Lakers or the Celtics. You kind of dislike both of them, And I kind of feel that way from the outside looking in for all of the royalty. And I guess I'll be rooting for Georgia just because I like fresh blood. And, I certainly don't have anything against, any of the other sort of outlier programs that there are. I've never been a Clemson hater. I mean, they beat Alabama, so it makes me like them more. But the Clemson-Alabama thing, they wanted that. They get it in New Orleans. Oklahoma and Georgia is an interesting game as well. And then they'll all get together in Atlanta, and they may have an all-Southern, home-cooking Georgia-Alabama, old-fashioned SEC slobber knocker right there in Atlanta for everybody to love and hold in their new dome. So that's kind of what college football sort of kind of wants, right?
Can I want to add something because I think what you said is really important, Nestor, and it was something I was thinking about today, is that, look, first of all, I've obviously spent the last 10 minutes explaining why I think the 4 best teams got in. But what I would say is this, is that, it is interesting to me, I don't think anybody talks about this, is that the college football playoff, I think, has made college football more of a national sport. But I find it interesting that it's really only the same 2 or 3 teams every year. And
Correct.
Your point about being... Yeah, and I did the math in my head, and thankfully it wasn't complicated math, but this is the 4th year of the playoff, so 16 total teams have qualified for the playoff. Of those 16 spots, 9, so over half have gone to, 10, have gone to, I told you I'm bad at math, have gone to 3 schools, 4 for Alabama, 3 for Clemson, and 3 for Ohio State. So it's really not all that inclusive. I mean, every once in a while, we had a Michigan State a few years ago, a Washington last year, Georgia this year. So every once in a while, a team will kind of rise.
The Kansas City Royals get their chance, right?
Yeah, the Kansas, exactly. So, by the way, I messed up that math again. It isn't 3 for Ohio State. It's 2 for Ohio State. See, Nestor, this is why I can't be doing math.
But by the way, arguing Ohio State versus Alabama, I got no dog in that hunt. If you want to make an argument for Central Florida, I'll hear that, right?
Yeah.
That would be more my argument, is that
I agree.
If you're splitting hairs. But I would also say there are 5 conferences, and they've all agreed that there's only going to be 4 teams. There's always going to be somebody with their feelings hurt, right?
Yeah, let me ask you this. Where do you stand on that, Nestor? Because, I've heard this thing of all the conference champions deserve to get in. Well,
that's impossible.
Stanford would. No. I was going to say, so that's the biggest argument for moving to 8 teams is all 5 Power 5 teams have to be allowed in, and all 5 conference champions. Well, Stanford went 9-3 during the regular season. They lost to San Diego State. So if they had won the Pac-12 championship, which they were 1 play away from doing, or 1 series away from doing, I should say, they should get in over Alabama or I've never liked that argument that, we should automatically include, all the conference champions and make it 8 teams. It's if we're going to, I think if anything, you remove the conference championship games. That to me, I don't know, man.
They're never going to do that. There's money involved in that.
Exactly. And so my point is, I don't like the idea that we have to include conference champions because then it sets up a scenario. Look, we've had 7 and 5 teams playing conference championship games. That team wins 1 game, they deserve a shot at the national championship. So, like I said, the inevitability of arguing over 8, it was funny watching the reaction on Sunday, Nestor. I know you were knee deep in Ravens stuff or in NFL stuff, but I just realized people are just never going to be happy. We literally couldn't figure out if there was a 4th team worthy of being in this playoff or not, and people are already demanding 8, and I'm sitting there we just saw Clemson lose, or we just saw Wisconsin lose. We just saw Auburn lose. Why would these teams then be included in this playoff? We saw Penn State lose twice in 2 weeks. Why would they? I don't know, man. I think 4 teams is really good, and you know what? We're spending all this time talking about Alabama versus Ohio State. I don't think it's a bad thing. Maybe I'm in the minority. I don't know.
Hey, dude, I always appreciate you. Anything you want to say about any of the rest of these Weed Eater Bowls that we have here? I mean, certainly some great names with cherry tart bowls and whatnot.
It's funny, me being the, domesticated man that I am, I was out during the day. I've spent so many Saturdays and Sundays watching football during the fall, and especially with my, increased radio responsibilities with Fox Sports Radio, I'm watching more NFL than ever before. So, I did my girl a solid and we went out and, did the domesticated thing. So I actually haven't really done a deep dive into the bowl schedule. The one that intrigues me, there's a few that intrigue me. I mean, obviously, I think one that I think is really interesting is the Fiesta Bowl with Penn State and Washington. I mean, Washington was a team that really, was a player or two away from being right in that playoff mix, being a one-loss team, but because of how they lost in tiebreakers and stuff, they didn't even play for a Pac-12 title. And Penn State, as we've discussed a little bit here, like they were one possession away from beating Ohio State, potentially being in the playoff themselves. So, I mean, this is kind of like the, Sisters of the Poor getting left out, all that kind of stuff. It's weird. I'm not as excited about USC Ohio State as most people. I know that's the big Cotton Bowl matchup, but I think it's mostly because of the fact that I've seen the Ohio State story before. Like they beat up really bad teams and they're kind of average against good teams. So I think that one's interesting. I think Notre Dame LSU is going to be a really fun one. Look, we all know that the market is oversaturated, that there's too many of these bowl games, but I do still think there are some good matchups kind of within the context of bowl season. But yeah, no, those are the ones that kind of stand out to me. Like I said, Washington, Penn State's going to be really intriguing. Notre Dame, LSU as well.
Quick Lane, Zaxby's, Dollar General Bowl, the Lockheed Martin Bowl, obviously the famous Idaho Potato Bowl with Central Michigan and Wyoming. I'll have some fun and some time to make fun of all that over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Aaron, always great to visit with you, man. We'll be looking out for you out on Twitter at Aaron_Torres as well as at Fox Sports Radio. Appreciate the college football conversation as always, my friend.
I appreciate it, Nestor. Always a pleasure to join you. So thank you very much.
And we're going to blame you if Antonio Brown does us dirty on Sunday, okay?
What'd you say?
We're going to blame you. Brown? You got to take that picture off Twitter, Nestor. Bro. You got to take it down.
Yeah, well, listen, when you come out to L.A. and we hit the town, like you've been promising me for years, I'll get the picture with Nestor, and then I'll switch out Antonio Brown.
I should have come out for the World Series. I screwed that all up. Aaron, we'll see you soon, bro.
Screwed that up bad, man.
Well, I mean, maybe there's a Carson visit for the Ravens. I don't know. I don't think that's possible. I think they're much more likely to be heading to Jacksonville or to Nashville. You can find Aaron at Fox Sports Radio as well as at Aaron_Torres. He's the guy standing next to Antonio Brown. You can find me out in the bay at Toyota.com Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. $10 a month, never any commitment, and always inspiration at PlanetOfTriumphs.com. Last but never least, any breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday, driving you home from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live right here on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I'm Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports. Thanks, brother.